Long before paved roads cut through the wilderness and electric light erased the darkness of night, there existed men who lived where maps ended, and nature ruled without mercy. They were known as mountain men. Alone or in small groups, they moved through endless forests, frozen rivers, and towering peaks, surviving not by comfort, but by skill. What they knew allowed them to live where most would perish within days. Today, many of those skills are lost to time. A mountain man did not wake to alarm clocks or warm hearths. He woke to frost on his blanket, to aching bones after sleeping on the frozen ground, and to the question that defined every single day of his life. Would he find food today, or go hungry once more? Survival was never guaranteed. Every movement, every choice carried weight. A wrong step could mean a broken ankle and certain death. A poor decision near winter could lead to starvation before spring. One of the first lost skills of the mountain man was his ability to read the land like a living book. He did not need signs or maps. He could look at the bend of a river and know where animals would cross. He watched the tops of trees to read the wind long before it reached the valley floor. He read tracks in mud, snow, and dust with such accuracy that he could tell not only what animal had passed, but how long ago, whether it was injured, and whether it was being hunted by another predator. This knowledge was not written down. It lived only in memory and experience, passed from man to man through harsh lessons. Fire was life. Without fire, a mountain man had no warmth, no boiled water, no cooked food, no protection from predators in the night. Matches were rare. A true mountain man knew how to make fire with flint and steel, with dry fungus, with resin-soaked wood, even with friction when resources were scarce. He learned to protect fire through storms and snowfall, shielding the smallest ember like a living heartbeat. Losing fire in winter could be a death sentence. Food was never certain. A mountain man hunted, trapped, fished, and foraged with equal dependence. He knew which roots could save his life and which berries would slowly kill him. He understood animal migration patterns and seasonal habits. When no animal could be found, he survived on dried meat saved from earlier hunts, or sometimes on nothing at all. Hunger was not an emergency. Hunger was normal. Starvation was always only weeks away. Clothing was another lost art. There were no stores, no replacement jackets waiting on shelves. Every piece of clothing was made from animal hide. A mountain man knew how to turn raw skin into protection against freezing winds. He knew which fur kept heat when wet and which failed. He learned through frozen fingers and frostbitten toes what worked and what did not. Gloves, moccasins, coats, hats, bedrolls, all came from animals he hunted himself. Nothing was wasted. Even tendons became thread. Gear was scarce and heavy. Every tool had to justify its weight. A knife was life. An axe meant shelter. A rifle meant food, but powder and lead were limited. When bullets ran low, a mountain man turned to traps and boughs. When traps broke, he fixed them with wire salvaged from anywhere he could. Nothing was replaced. Everything was repaired. Shelter was not comfort. Shelter was survival. Sometimes it was a simple lean-to against a fallen tree. Sometimes a dugout shelter, half buried in the earth. Sometimes a crude log cabin built with frozen hands and green wood. Snow was sometimes used as insulation, packed against walls to keep the heat in. Smoke holes had to be perfect. Too small, and the shelter filled with smoke. Too large, and the heat escaped into the night. Disease and injury were constant shadows. There were no doctors in the mountains. Infection was often fatal. A small cut could turn into a death sentence. Broken bones meant starvation. The mountain man relied on basic herbal knowledge, on cold water, on fire, and on endurance. Pain was not treated. It was endured. Fever was not cured. It was survived or it was not. Loneliness was one of the hardest trials. Months passed without seeing another human face. Some mountain men traveled alone for years. The silence crushed the weak and shaped the strong. Many spoke to no one but the fire and the wind. Some lost their minds in the endless emptiness. Others found a strange peace that they could never again find among civilization. Trading posts were rare islands of human presence. Once or twice a year, mountain men would emerge from the wild to trade furs for powder, lead, knives, blankets, and food. For a brief moment, they drank, laughed, fought, and felt human again. Then they vanished back into the forests for another season of isolation and danger. Many of these skills have vanished because modern life no longer requires them. Navigation is replaced by GPS. Fire is made by a lighter. Food comes wrapped in plastic. Warmth is generated by pressing a button. We no longer depend on the forest for survival, and because of that, we no longer truly understand it. Yet the legacy of the mountain man remains carved into history. These men mapped rivers no one had seen, crossed mountains no one had named, and survived winters few today could imagine. Their lives were brutal, lonely, and often short. But the skills they carried were among the purest expressions of human adaptability ever known. The mountain man lived with death always near, yet he lived fully. Every sunrise mattered. Every fire was precious. Every meal was earned. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was taken for granted. And perhaps that is the greatest lost skill of all. And yet, even in a life shaped by struggle, there were moments of quiet beauty that only the mountain man ever truly witnessed. Mist rising from a river at dawn, the distant call of a wolf across a frozen valley, the way the stars burned brighter when no other light existed on earth. These moments could not be bought, traded, or carried. They were earned only through hardship, and they reminded him why he remained when so many fled back to civilization. Trust in nature was not blind faith, but a relationship built over years of listening and observing. The mountain man learned when the weather would turn before the clouds arrived. He knew when a storm would trap him for days and when a clear path would open through the mountains. The forest spoke constantly to those who knew how to listen, through cracking ice, shifting winds, and the uneasy silence that warned of predators nearby. Winter was the final judge of all skill. No season exposed weakness faster. Snow buried traps. Rivers froze solid, cutting off fishing. Game grew scarce and wary. Every step cost energy that could not be replaced easily. Frostbite took fingers, toes, and sometimes entire limbs. Some winters ended men who had survived a dozen before them. Survival was never guaranteed, no matter how experienced one became. Many mountain men kept no journals. Their stories vanished with them into snow-covered graves that were never marked. Only fragments remain in old trading records, faded letters, and oral traditions passed down through generations. What we know today is only a small shadow of what once existed in living knowledge. And so the lost skills of the mountain man are not simply techniques of fire, fur, or shelter. They are reminders of a time when survival demanded total attention, when the line between life and death was always visible, and when every human sense was sharpened by necessity. And in the end, the mountain man's life teaches us more than survival. It teaches patience, observation, and respect for a world that does not bend to human desire. Every day was a lesson, every hardship a teacher, and every quiet moment a reward that few could ever understand. The wind through the trees, the crackle of a fire, the whisper of snow underfoot. These were the music of his existence, simple yet profound, reminding him that life was precious because it was fragile. We cannot live exactly as they did, and perhaps we would not survive. Yet their world, though distant and often brutal, offers lessons that transcend time. To watch, to listen, and to learn from the land. To understand that every resource, every animal, every tree, every drop of water carries meaning. And that true skill is not just in what one can take, but in what one observes, respects, and preserves. So when we look back at the lost skills of the mountain man, we see more than tools or techniques. We see courage, adaptability, and a way of life that challenged men to meet nature on its own terms. And in remembering them, perhaps we also remember a piece of ourselves. The part that can still marvel at the wilderness, endure its hardships, and find beauty in its relentless, untamed rhythm.